want to direct our attention today to the book of 1 Kings, chapter 3. Can we thank God for this music ministry that has richly blessed us today? Thank you so much. 1 Kings, chapter 3. We thank God for these ministers who have led us through this liturgy of worship, and to all of the officers of this branch of Zion, we thank God for you. The context of today's message is found from verses 16 through verse 28. But for our purposes, I want to begin reading at verse 23. Then the king said, "The one says, 'This is my son that is alive, and your son is dead.' While the other says, 'Not so. Your son is dead, and my son is the living one.' So the king said, 'Bring me a sword.' And they brought a sword before the king. The king said, 'Divide the living boy in two. Then give half the one and half to the other.' But the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because compassion for her son burned within her, 'Please, my lord, give her the living boy. Certainly do not kill him.' The other said, 'It shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide it.' Then the king responded, 'Give the first woman the living boy. Do not kill him. She is his mother.' All Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to execute justice." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. As we celebrate this Mother's Day together, I want to lift as a subject for your consideration, lessons from a wise mother. Lessons from a wise mother. I've learned to be very careful of quickly rendering judgment on people before you really understand their situation. It is easy to critique where someone is and what someone is doing without understanding the story of how they got there. I learned this lesson as a little boy watching the greatest movie ever recorded, Forrest Gump. There's one particular scene in Forrest Gump where we as the viewers have discovered that there was something different about Forrest Gump. In fact, the principal of his school said as much when Mrs. Gump went in order to advocate for her son to have a strong education. The problem with Forrest was he performed academically below state standards, and his mother wanted him to have the same education as everyone else. And the principal replied, "Your boy's different, Miss Gump. He's got an IQ of 75. And she said, "Well, certainly there's something that can be done for my boy." And the principal, without saying a word, gave a look that I did not quite understand as a little boy. And quickly the scene shifted to the Gump house at nighttime. And Forrest was sitting outside on the porch while adult noises filled the evening air coming from his mother's bedroom. As a little boy, I didn't understand what was happening, but as an adult, I know full well that there was something happening outside of school hours that was not sanctioned by the Board of Education. And suffice it to say, Forrest went on to receive the same kind of education as everyone else and would go on to do great things. As I got older, I thought about that particular scene. And early on, I wanted to really criticize Forrest's mother for going to such extreme lengths to ensure that Forrest was in school with everyone else. But can I humanize Forrest Gump's mother for a minute? And can I lift up and remind us of some of our own stories? We have all had points in our own lives where we have done things that we don't want the record to reflect, not for ourselves, but because we've loved somebody else. I'm preaching better than you let know. We ought to be very careful, church folk, I'm talking to us, about quickly rendering judgment about the decisions that people have made when we do not understand the story as to how they got there. We're acquainted with a similar kind of situation in 1 Kings chapter 3. By the time we arrived at the book of 1 Kings, David has already closed his eyes, and Solomon is now king over all of Israel. This did not come smoothly, for understand, Solomon was not David's eldest son. David's eldest surviving son was a brother by the name of Adonijah, but Adonijah went about trying to succeed his father David the wrong way. And in so doing, Solomon was then recognized and anointed and affirmed by a dying David and supported by his mother Bathsheba to be king over all of Israel. And there was something distinctive and special about Solomon. Solomon would become the third king over all of Israel, and first king would go on to tell us about the kind of king Solomon was and the kind of kingdom Solomon led. As Solomon was becoming king, he went into prayer with God. And God said to Solomon, whatever it is that your heart desires, I will give to you, and all you have to do is ask me. And Solomon could have asked for all of the riches of the world. Solomon could have asked for all of the geopolitical relationships around the world. But instead, Solomon does not ask for any of that. Solomon, before God, asks God for wisdom. Solomon says, God, give me the wisdom so that I may be able to rightly lead your people in the way that you would have them to go. And in so doing, God smiles upon Solomon, and because Solomon asked the most noble thing, not only does God grant unto Solomon all of the wisdom of the world that far surpasses any other king or kingdom, but then God also makes Solomon the wealthiest king in the entire world. Because Solomon asked the right thing of God, God then in turn blessed Solomon with more than he could ever ask, think, or imagine. And can I pause there and suggest to us on Mother's Day that if you learn how to ask God for the right thing, God reserves the right to bless you beyond your wildest dreams. God reserves the right to give you more than you've ever expected. And so Solomon asked God for wisdom, and in turn, God not only grants Solomon's request, but then gives Solomon more than what he asks for. And we would go on to see that there are many things that Solomon does during his time, during the golden age of Israel. Solomon would go on to build palaces. Solomon would go on to build a temple and finish the work that David wanted to do. Solomon would also engage in international treaties. He was known as a master diplomat, and in so doing, he then had many wives that he acquired from around the world. Now, I would suggest to you that although Solomon had all of these things, that his heart grew far away from God. But that's a sermon for a different day. Solomon, we can see, had wisdom, and he was a master builder and a master diplomat. In fact, scholars are kind enough to tell us that under Solomon, that Israel spanned as far as the Euphrates to the territory of the Philistines, and then all the way south to the border of Egypt. Solomon ruled over a vast kingdom, and he was known for his wisdom. Wisdom was the most coveted trait of kings and kingdoms in the 10th century BCE. People would study under the best tutors in the world in order to glean pearls of wisdom. Wisdom was not only the ability to rightly discern and decipher, but wisdom was likened to encyclopedia-like knowledge. If one was to be named as wise, it was understood that they would be like a walking Google. You could ask them anything and they would be able with accuracy to tell you the answer with specificity. When one was wise, one knew all about nature. One knew about animals. One knew about all of the right advice to give to a child. How to negotiate relationships with a spouse. How to be a good lover. I'm talking about wisdom. Wisdom was that trait that was desired most. Because if one was deemed to be wise, it meant that they could be trusted with more. And can I pull up on your street for those of you who are frustrated because you might not have as much as someone else, might not be entrusted with as much as someone else? Perhaps God has determined in his sovereign wisdom that your wisdom only gives you a certain capacity to handle certain things. And so we are able to see, even early on, the wisdom of Solomon. There's no question that Solomon was wise. We see this in his prayer for wisdom. But on this Mother's Day, I want to suggest to us that while, yes, we can concede that Solomon was wise, in this particular narrative of 1 Kings chapter 3, I want to suggest and argue before you that Solomon was not the wisest in this situation. It is here in this narrative of 1 Kings 3 that we meet the wisdom of a wise mother. Around verse 16, we are introduced to a situation that is considered a dispute. I would like to welcome you posthumously to the latest episode of Jerry Springer. It is here that we have two mothers who are arguing over custody and maternity. Who is the birth mother? I'd like to introduce you to Queenie. Queenie says that she has given birth to a healthy 8-pound baby boy. She breastfeeds him. She changes his diaper. She argues that his nose and his ears come from his father. She knows without a shadow of a doubt that this is her baby. But now I'd like to introduce you to Respucia. Respucia says that this baby is not Queenie's baby, but it is her baby. And she knows so because of the way that his lips poke out, because his lips look just like the Father. So we want to know, who is the mother of this baby and who has rightful claim to custody? The truth is, this is a complicated situation. These two women are not just mothers, but according to the text, they are also prostitutes. Now, I told y'all before, y'all are quick to judge like you're ready to do. Be careful of quickly executing judgment on where people are when you don't know how they got there. Amen. We don't know why Queenie and Respucia are prostitutes. We just know that this is their occupation. And certainly I would imagine, if I could engage hermeneutical suspicion, that if they could do something else, they would be doing something else. Nobody in 10th century Israel wanted to be a prostitute. It was the last resort of being able to provide a living for one and their family. We could presume that they have no husband, that they have no father, that they have no brother, and in order to eat and survive, they have to sell their bodies. This is where they are. And not only is this their lot, but then the perception of them is very low as well. Who wants to be in conversation with somebody so low? Who wants to be connected and in conversation with two Israelite prostitutes? And yet, despite their choices, despite their hand, despite where they are in life, they are still mothers. And they are still human. Can I suggest to some of us who are struggling today with Mother's Day, perhaps you did not have the mother you wanted to have. Perhaps your relationship is estranged. Perhaps mom has fallen asleep and you have some questions that are still unanswered. Perhaps you were in a situation where mama didn't have custody of you, or she had custody, but it wasn't what it should have been. Might I suggest to you that even though you might not have had the mama you wanted, that you still had a mama who loved you, who brought you into this world. And if you can thank God for nothing else on Mother's Day, you ought to be able to thank God that you have the gift of life, that you are breathing, that you are living. These two mothers, they're prostitutes. And it seems that life could not get any lower until both of them deliver babies 3 days apart and one of them dies. I pray today for any mother who has had to say goodnight to a child that you brought into this world. There's nothing more disturbing than the disruption of natural order. Respucia rolls over in the middle of the night and suffocates her child, and the baby dies. And in the middle of the night, she takes her dead baby and switches it with Queenie's baby, puts her beside her breast to create the illusion that her baby died during the night. And when Queenie wakes up in the morning, She sees that the baby is dead, and she automatically goes into a panic until she says, wait a minute. I know my baby. I've always been amazed by mothers. Never shall forget one instance. I was with my aunt. She had just delivered one of her sons. And I remember going to see the new baby in the nursery of the hospital. And she was showing me the baby. She had turned her back, and all of a sudden, one of the babies started crying in the nursery. And she knew without looking instantly that it was her baby. I said, Auntie, all of these babies in here, they're all the same age, born the same week. A cry does not have a color. A cry does not have a facial feature. And she says, Eric, I don't care how many babies are in the room. As this baby's mama, I know my baby anywhere. I can tell my child by the way he calls my name, by the inflection in his voice, by the way that he frames his words. I know my child. I know my child. And this is what Esther, her name is Queen Esther. I call her Queenie for short. This is what she says when she wakes up in the morning. This is not my baby. And now the dispute ensues, and they have to go to Jerry Springer. And they bring the baby before King Solomon. And they offer their perspectives as to what has happened. And Solomon listens as he adjudicates. And Solomon says, bring me a sword. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Since there is not a consensus as to who the true mother of this baby is, and since I cannot determine who has rightful custody, we're going to cut the baby in half. And you get half of the baby, and you get half of the baby. Now, I wonder if Solomon really was going to execute this executive order. Certainly, no mother wants to see their child suffer. Every mother wants the opportunity to love and to care and to nurture. But sometimes circumstances in life don't allow a mother to do what they are created and designed to do. My heart goes out to mothers who love their child but have to offer them up for adoption. My heart goes out to mothers who want to provide, who want to care, but because the way life is set up for them, they are unable to do so. Solomon says, bring me a sword. I'm going to cut the baby in half. And Queenie, the rightful mother, says, listen, I love my child, but I would rather see my child live with somebody else. If it means they'll have an opportunity to live out their life and realize dreams and accomplish their goals, I would rather see my child live. Even if it means I have to step back and take on another role, watch from afar, love from a distance, I would rather see my child live. My heart goes out to the mothers today who have had to demonstrate more love for their child over their own personal preferences because they would rather see us live than suffer. She says, King, just give her the baby. Just give her the baby. Can I give you this lesson from a wise mother? A wise mother always puts the best interest of her child before herself. This is not the kind of mother that drops off her baby at the grandmama's house so she can go hang out on Saturday night all night. This is a mother who has to make a self-sacrificial decision for the betterment of her child's life. Through her tears, through her disappointment, through her anguish, she has done nothing wrong, done nothing to anybody. But she has to give up her child so that her child can live. But let me show you a fool. Let me show you the kind of mother that you don't want to be. Let me show you, brothers, the kind of mother that you don't want to carry your child. Respucia says, yeah, kill the baby. Cut it in half. That way neither of us can have a baby. She tells on herself. Because she says, if this baby dies, then neither of us have a baby. This kind of mother does not have an empathetic heart for other folk. I lost my baby, why shouldn't she lose hers? Instead of having a heart that would prevent somebody else from dealing with the trauma and the trauma that she has experienced, she wants others to feel her pain. That's a fool there. And you don't have to be Respucia to have this kind of foolish heart. Any person who wants to inflict suffering on another, your name is Respucia. Any person, man or woman, who does not have empathy and love and compassion for others, you are a Respucia. You're a fool and there's no wisdom in you. She says, well, I've had to suffer. Kill the baby. Can I tell you that when grown folks decide to be like fools, when parents overall decide to act like fools, the children who are innocent are the ones who suffer. And what am I saying to us on Mother's Day 2023? I'm suggesting to us that we all have an opportunity to decide what kind of person we will be. You have the opportunity today to determine, mothers, what kind of mother I will be. Maybe you've had some Respucia moments. It's not too late to make a Queenie turn. Maybe you haven't always gotten it right. Maybe if you could go back and turn the hands of time, you would do some things differently. But guess what? Today is the best day. It's the perfect day. It's the wonderful day to chart a new course as a mother. Perhaps you couldn't help the hand that you were dealt, but you can determine how you play what you got. And so, this wise mother who is standing beside a fool says, I would rather see my baby live even if it means living with the wrong mother, just so he can have a chance. I don't know how you feel about it, but I thank God for a mama and a grandmama who just wanted me to have a chance. Can anybody agree with me? Can anybody just thank God for a mama who just did her best to make sure that you just had a chance to, who made sure that your life was just a little better than the one you had? I can hear the heart of Queenie. I don't want my child to live life the way I had to live it. I just want my baby to have a chance. So Solomon, in his wisdom, sees the heart and the wisdom of this mother. And he says the DNA test has come back and has determined that, Queenie, you are the mother. And because you are the mother, you have custody of your baby. And the text says that all of Israel was in awe because of the way that Solomon rightfully judged this case. And that's cool, that's okay. Israel can be in awe of Solomon. But I am in awe of a mother who could put herself to the side for the sake of her child. I am in awe of a mom who is wise enough and loving enough to care for her child, even if it means that she has to suffer. I'm through, but it reminds me of my mother. We discovered my mother was terminally ill. She took a leave of absence from her job. Body completely ravaged by chemotherapy and radiation. So weak that even as a young woman of 35 could no longer walk under her own power. Reminds me of my mom, who once had beautiful flowing hair, but cancer claimed the follicles, and her hair was short, and her beautiful chocolate smooth skin started to wrinkle under the weight of sickness. I watched my sisters care for her day and night, while her body betrayed her and her insides tried to come to the outside. If you've ever smelled the stench of stage 4 colon cancer, if you've ever smelled the stench of a colostomy bag being changed, then you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Didn't have the strength to stand on her own, could no longer drive, had no use for money. You know, when you get to the end, you start to really see what's truly important in life. My mother, who could no longer keep anything down, who wanted to just taste lemonade and chocolate milk just so her taste buds could do backflips, but then spit it out so she wouldn't be sick. My mother, one who brought me into the world 3 months shy of her 19th birthday. I'm talking about mama today. My mama, in the last 60 days of her life, could no longer work. I watched her put on clothes one day and drag herself into General Motors to work one shift on one day so that our benefits would not expire, because she knew that we would need benefits after she closed her eyes. I'm just talking about the kind of mama I thank God for mamas like my mama. She didn't always get it right, but I thank God for my mama, who thought enough of her children that even if it meant she had to suffer a little while, she would do whatever was necessary to make sure that we just had a chance. I'm done with my Mother's Day message, but is there anybody here who can just lift up holy hands and help me thank God for the gift of wise mamas, for the gift of mothers who think enough of their children just to give them a chance, just so they can have a shot at a life just a little better than the one they had? So take a lesson from a wise mother. When you become a mom, life is no longer all about you. And it's early, but when you become a daddy, life is not just about you. You get your hair done, let that baby get their hair done. You get a new outfit, let that baby get a new outfit. You get some new shoes, let that baby have some new shoes. It can't be about you. This is why we've got to listen to the advice of some of the older mothers, some of the mothers who have been here, the great-grandmothers and the grandmothers and the older mothers. Neither of these women lived an ideal life for a mom. But where you are in life ought not determine how you are in life. Queenie said, I may be a prostitute, but I'm still a good mama. I may not be desirable in the eyes of society, but I love my child, and I have the capacity to make good decisions for my child. Mama, you may not be where you want to be, but even where you are, you can still be a godly mother. If society would have been able to tell their narrative, Israel would have said there's no way that a prostitute can be a good mama. But when you know who you are and whose you are, you can be more than what people call you. And you can be more than what you have been. I thank God for the mothers today. I thank God for mothers. I'm talking about the kind of mothers who knew how to take a meal on Sunday and stretch it to next Saturday. I thank God for mothers. I'm talking about the kind of mothers who, when they couldn't afford to buy a new pair of shoes, they knew how to take some cardboard and put it in the bottom so your feet wouldn't get wet when you walked in the room. I thank God for mothers. For mothers who said, I don't have a whole lot to give you, but the greatest gift I can give you is a relationship with Jesus Christ, who will walk with you and talk with you. I thank God for mothers. And I thank God for extra mothers. Amen. Those who might not have had children of their own, but who stepped in as a part of the village. And if they saw you messing up down the street, you got a whooping down the street and then got one when you got back home. I thank God for. You may be here today as we extend this invitation. As our deacons are coming, what's the lesson for us? Here's the lesson. To choose wisdom today. The Bible says something very interesting about wisdom, that God will give it to you if you ask for it. What made Solomon wise before God granted him wisdom was the fact that he had enough intelligence to ask God for it. Which means this: if you walk out of here today a fool, it's your fault. I want to extend an opportunity to you to make the wisest decision you could ever make. And you don't have to be a mother today to make this decision. If you are not in relationship with God through Jesus Christ, I want to invite you into a relationship with Him. Perhaps you're saying, Pastor, you don't know where I've been and you don't know what I've done. I've made some decisions that I'm not proud of. I think it's too late for me. Can I tell you that if you are living and breathing, you have an opportunity right now to make the wisest decision that you could ever make. Perhaps you're here and you're saying, Pastor, I'm in relationship with God, but I don't have a covering. I don't have a church home. What better day than today? Than today to be connected with a new family. If you're here, we invite you to come. Wherever you are, my brother, my sister, make a wise decision today. Please don't forget. Please don't. I thank God for the mothers. I had a mama and a grandmama who taught me about Jesus. I'm grateful. If you're here, wherever you are, my brother, my sister, just come.